Winter came early that year. Not the soft postcard kind of winter. I'm talking about the kind that buries your driveway overnight and turns silence into a weapon. I live in a mountain community where snow isn't just weather, it's survival. The roads twist through pine forests and steep ridges. Miss one morning of clearing and you're trapped. No mail, no groceries, no ambulance, nothing. So I did what I'd done every winter for 10 years. I fired up my snowblower at 5:30 a.m. The engine roared to life, cutting through the frozen dawn like a chainsaw through glass. Snow flew in perfect white arcs. My driveway cleared fast. Then I did the neighbors' driveways, tooled Mrs. Keaton. The couple with the newborn, the guy who worked night shifts at the hospital. I wasn't being nice. I was being smart. Because up here, we survived together. That's when the HOA decided I was the problem. 2 weeks into the season, I found a bright orange notice taped to my mailbox. Violation of noise ordinance, snow. Removal equipment usage before 7 a.m. I laughed at first. A real laugh. Out loud. Because it had to be a joke. The HOA had been useless for years. They never plowed the road. Never salted the hills. Never checked on anyone during storms. Their biggest contribution was sending emails about trash bin colors and mailbox height regulations. And now? They were mad about my snowblower. I ignored the notice. Next morning, 5:30 a.m., I pulled the starter cord, nothing nigh. Pulled again, still nothing. I checked the fuel. Fine. I checked the spark plug. Fine. Then I saw it, a thick yellow lock chained around the handle, and framed dot and zip tied to it was another HOA notice. Continued violation will result in fines and legal action. Equipment disabled per HOA authority. My breath fogged in front of my face. Not from cold. From anger, they had come onto my property in the night and locked my machine. I marched back inside. Called the HOA office, straight to voicemail. So I drove down to the community center where they held meetings. The building looked warm and cozy. Lights on, coffee brewing. People laughing inside. They were having breakfast. I walked in with snow on my boots and fury in my chest. The HOA president stood up slowly when he saw me. His name was Brent. Former middle manager. Loved rules more than oxygen. He smiled like he'd won something. "Good morning," he said. "We've received multiple complaints about your snowblower." "Complaints from who?" I asked. He flipped through a folder like he was in court. "Several residents near the entrance road. They say your machine is disruptive." Disruptive. I snapped. "I'm the only reason anyone can leave this neighborhood." Brent adjusted his glasses. "Our bylaws say no loud equipment before 7 a.m. I stared at him. "You realize the sun doesn't wait for your bylaws, right? People work. Emergency vehicles come through that road." Another board member leaned in. A woman with a tight smile and perfect hair. You could shovel manually. Laughed again. It sounded darker this time. "That road is half a mile uphill." Brent raised a finger. "We've decided to confiscate your snowblower until spring." The room went quiet. "You touched my property without permission." I said, "We acted in the interest of community harmony." Community harmony. That phrase stuck in my skull like a nail. I left before I did something I'd regret. But as I walked out, I noticed something important. Their parking lot was perfectly plowed, smooth, clean, salted. Someone had cleared it that morning, and I knew exactly who me that night. The storm came hard. Wind howled through the trees. Snow buried the road like a white ocean. By morning, no one could get out. I stood on my porch with coffee in my hand and watched the world disappear. Cars stuck halfway down driveways. People slipping on ice. A delivery truck spinning its wheels, and my snowblower. Still locked, my phone started buzzing. Messages from neighbors. Can you clear the road? Emergency. My kid has a fever. HOA isn't answering. I wanted to help. I really did, but I couldn't. The HOA had silenced the only machine capable of clearing the mountain road around noon. I heard shouting. Brent's SUV was stuck sideways across the road near the bend. He was out there in loafers, waving his arms like a man flagging down a helicopter. I walked down with my boots crunching through snow. Looks like community harmony needs a jumpstart, I said. He turned red. You need to unlock your machine right now. I don't have the key, I said calmly. You confiscated it. He stared at me. You're endangering residents. No, I replied. You did that when you chose silence over safety. By evening, the county issued a weather emergency advisory. No plows could reach us. The road was officially impassable, and that's when I remembered something the HOA had forgotten. Years ago, when this neighborhood was built, the main access road crossed a strip of land that wasn't HOA-owned. It was mine, a forgotten deed clause. A narrow section of gravel road just past the gate. Technically private property. I'd never cared. I let everyone use it because community mattered until now. That night, I went to my garage. I found my old construction barricades. Reflective signs, chains, and a big red night trespassing board from a past project by midnight. The only road in and out of the neighborhood was blocked. Not aggressively, not violently, legally. The next morning, the HOA woke up to a sealed exit, and suddenly, they couldn't leave either. Phones exploded. Meetings were called. Voicemails piled up. Brent pounded on my door. You can't do this. I opened it slowly. You silenced my snowblower, I said. So I silenced your road. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. You're holding the community hostage. I leaned against the doorframe. No, I'm teaching it who actually keeps it alive. And that's when the lawyers got involved. But they didn't expect what I had waiting, because while they were busy writing fines, I was reading deeds, and what I found would change everything. Asterisk, asterisk, by noon. The neighborhood felt like a shaken beehive. Cars lined up at the barricade. People stood in clumps, boots sinking into snow, arguing with each other and staring at my sign like it was a crime scene. Who did this? Is this even legal? My boss is going to fire me. We need to call the police. Brent called an emergency HOA meeting in the community center. They live-streamed it on the neighborhood app like it was a presidential address. I tuned in from my couch with a mug of coffee and watched them panic. Brent sat at the head of the table, pale and sweating. The perfect-haired bored woman sat beside him, tapping her pen like a ticking clock. This situation is unacceptable, Brent said into the microphone. One resident has unlawfully obstructed a public road. I almost choked on my coffee. Public road. That word would be his undoing. A man stood up in the audience. Old Mr. Ruiz, who had lived here since the first houses were built. That road was never public, he said. I remember when we had to sign waivers just to drive on it. The room murmured. Brent slammed his gavel. This is not the time for folklore. But it wasn't folklore. It was paperwork. Years ago, when I bought my land, I almost walked away from the deal because of that strip of gravel road. My lawyer had flagged it immediately. This section isn't under HOA control, she'd said. It's your property, but it carries an easement for community use. You can revoke access under certain conditions. At the time, I didn't care. I wanted peace. I wanted trees and quiet and snow now. I wanted fairness. Asterisk, I had spent the entire night digging through old files. Yellowed surveys, county maps, deed restrictions. And there it was in black ink. Owner retains right to suspend access in cases of liability, risk, or unlawful interference with property use. Unlawful interference. Like chaining my snowblower, the HOA sent a lawyer that afternoon. A young guy with a shiny briefcase and shoes too clean for snow. He stood at the barricade and read from his phone. "You are obstructing a roadway critical to public safety." I handed him a laminated copy of the deed. "Read line 12, I said. He squinted. Then he went quiet. He stepped aside and made a call. 30 minutes later, Brent showed up in a parka that looked borrowed. "You think this is funny?" He shouted. "No," I said. "I think it's educational. You're forcing us to negotiate under duress." I nodded. "Welcome to what you did to me." By evening, the neighborhood was divided. Half the people blamed me. Half blamed the HOA. Asterisk, asterisk. But the tide started turning when Mrs. Keaton slipped on her driveway and broke her wrist. No ambulance could get in. They had to call a snowmobile rescue unit. That changed everything. People started asking real questions. Why did the HOA lock? Why don't they plow the road? What exactly do they do with our fees? At the next emergency meeting, voices were raised. A nurse stood up. "My shift starts at 6. I can't wait until 7 for snow removal." Someone could die. Another man yelled, "You fined him for helping us?" Brent tried to restore order. We were enforcing bylaws. "But you endangered us," someone shouted back. The perfect-haired woman leaned into her microphone. "He took revenge by cutting off our only road." I stood up from the back of the room. "No," I said. "I showed you what silence sounds like." The room froze. I walked forward slowly. "For 10 years, I cleared this road for free. For 10 years, you ignored winter until it scared you. Then you chained my machine and called it harmony." I held up the yellow notice. "This is what started it." Brent's face twitched. "You could have appealed." "I tried to call you. You were eating pancakes." Some people laughed. Some clapped. That's when Brent's lawyer whispered something in his ear. Brent straightened up. "We are prepared to seek a court order." I smiled. "Good. I already did." Gasps rippled across the room. I pulled out a folded paper. A temporary injunction from the county clerk. It stated that, until the dispute over property rights and equipment interference was resolved, the HOA could not touch my land or machinery. The room exploded. "You planned this?" Someone yelled. "No," I said. "You forced it?" That night, snow fell again. Heavy, relentless, like the sky was siding with me. And then something unexpected happened. 3 neighbors knocked on my door, not to yell, to apologize. "We didn't know they locked your machine," one said. "They told us you just refused to help," another added. I let them into the garage. I showed them the chain, the notice, the frozen machine. Silence filled the room. The next morning, more neighbors came. Then more. By noon, half the neighborhood stood with me at the barricade. Someone brought coffee. Someone else brought donuts. It looked less like a protest and more like a festival of rebellion. The HOA panicked. They sent emails, threats, fines no one paid. And then came the twist. A county inspector arrived. Not because of me, because of the HOA. Turns out, the community road wasn't up to emergency standards. No proper snow removal contract. No signage. No winter plan. They had been cutting corners for years, and now they were exposed. The inspector taped a notice to the community center door. Access road unsafe for emergency vehicles. Compliance review initiated. The HOA office closed. Brent vanished for 2 days. When he came back, he looked smaller. He came to my house alone. "I'll unlock your snowblower," he said quietly. "We'll drop the fines." I crossed my arms. "That's not enough. What do you want?" I looked past him at the road. "I want control of snow removal. In writing. No interference. No noise complaints. And I want the HOA to admit they endangered residents." He swallowed. "You're asking for our authority?" I shook my head. "No, I'm asking for accountability." He didn't answer, because at that moment, his phone rang, and whatever he heard made his face go white. He hung up slowly. "The county is auditing our finances," he said. I nodded. Winter exposes everything. The audit hit the HOA like an avalanche 2 days after. The county inspector showed up. Rumors spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Missing funds. Fake maintenance reports. A snow removal contract that existed only on paper. Turns out, the HOA had been collecting winter road maintenance fees for 5 years. They never hired a plow. They never bought salt. They never built an emergency plan. The money went nowhere anyone could explain. Brent called another meeting. This time, the room was packed and angry. "We are victims of poor bookkeeping," he said, sweat rolling down his neck. That's when someone stood up and shouted, "So where did the snow money go?" Silence. Another voice followed. "You fined him for using his snowblower while stealing our safety fund." Brent pointed at me. "He sabotaged the road. He created this crisis." Every eye turned toward me. I stepped forward. "I didn't create winter," I said. "You did. By pretending it didn't exist." People clapped loud that night. The HOA filed a lawsuit against me for obstruction and emotional distress by morning. 3 neighbors joined me as witnesses by afternoon. 12 more signed statements saying the HOA endangered them, and by evening, Brent resigned. The perfect-haired woman vanished from the board. The lawsuit quietly disappeared a week later. The barricade came down. My snowblower was unlocked. But the biggest twist: the county revoked the HOA's authority over the road entirely. They handed winter control to the residents, and somehow, to me, I became the official snow manager of the mountain, the man they tried to silence, the man who shut down their only road, and the man who proved that power doesn't come from rules. It comes from the one who clears the path. Losing control of the road didn't stop the HOA. It just made them dangerous. A week after Brent resigned, a letter appeared in my mailbox, certified, thick envelope. Legal language so cold it felt colder than the snow outside. They were suing me again. This time, not for blocking the road, for loss of authority and reputational damage. Basically, they were mad that the truth came out. They claimed I had manipulated the neighborhood, that I had staged a crisis, that I had encouraged rebellion. I sat at my kitchen table and read it twice. Then I laughed, because they still didn't understand what had really happened. I hadn't turned the neighbors against them. Winter had the next HOA meeting was supposed to be small, just lawyers and board members. Instead, the entire neighborhood showed up. People stood in the aisles, against the walls, outside the windows. The new acting president tried to open with a speech about moving forward peacefully. He never finished. A woman stood up, holding a stack of papers. "These are copies of every winter fee I've paid for 6 years," she said. "Where did it go?" Another man shouted, "My father almost died because an ambulance couldn't get up the hill." A teenager yelled, "You find the only guy who helped us." The board tried to regain control. "We are here to discuss legal matters." "No," someone yelled. "You're here to explain yourselves." Then something unexpected happened. Brent walked in, no suit, no tie, just a coat and tired eyes. "I did wrong," he said quietly. The room went silent. I enforced rules instead of listening. I chose quiet over safety. And I let money disappear because I didn't want to ask hard questions. He looked at me, and I blamed him because it was easier than blaming myself. People didn't clap, they just stared. That apology broke whatever power the HOA still had. Within minutes, residents were calling for a vote, not to fix the road, to dissolve the board. Entirely hands went up, one by one, almost everyone. The motion passed just like that. The HOA collapsed under its own weight. The lawsuit vanished. Overnight, the fines were erased. The locks were gone. A week later, the county posted a new sign at the entrance road: Community Managed Access Winter Emergency Route. And under that, a smaller sign someone had added by hand: Snow cleared by neighbors. Every morning after that, I started my snowblower at 5:30 again. No chains, no threats. Sometimes I'd hear doors open, boots crunching behind me. People came out with shovels, coffee, jokes. We cleared together, not because of rules, because of trust. The roads stayed open all winter. No accidents, no emergencies blocked, no silence. And I realized something strange. The HOA thought silencing me would give them control. But cutting off their road didn't give me power. Either it gave the neighborhood something better, a reminder that community isn't paperwork, it's action, and winter doesn't care who's in charge. Asterisk, asterisk, spring came slowly that year. The snow melted in heavy sheets, revealing the scars winter had carved into the road: deep ruts, broken signs, frozen gravel pushed aside by months of struggle. But something else had changed too. The neighborhood felt awake. There was no HOA office anymore. No warning letters. No fines taped to mailboxes. Just a shared board at the community center with handwritten notes: snow shift schedule, salt pickup Thursday, coffee after plowing my place. Brent moved out by summer. He left quietly. No farewell meeting. No speeches. Just a for sale sign and a truck pulling away one morning. I heard later he took a job in the city, managing a storage facility. Some people said he was embarrassed. I think he was relieved. Years passed. Winters still came hard. Storms still buried the road. But now, no one waited for permission to act. Teenagers learned to shovel driveways. Retirees monitored weather apps. We bought a shared plow with pooled money and my snowblower. It became a symbol. Every time I started it at 5:30 a.m., porch lights flicked on like constellations. Doors opened. Neighbors waved. Someone always brought coffee. One morning, a little boy stood at the edge of his driveway watching me work. "Are you the road guy?" he asked. I laughed. "I guess so." Years later, the county officially designated our road as a community-managed emergency route. They installed reflectors, added lighting, even named it on their map. But the real change wasn't legal. It was personal. Because when the HOA tried to silence me, they thought power came from rules. When I cut off their only road, I thought power came from leverage. We were both wrong. Power came from showing up in the cold, when no one else would, from choosing noise over silence, action over comfort, community over control. Now, every winter morning, I still hear the snowblower echo through the trees. Not as rebellion, but as a promise. Promise that no one here will ever be trapped again. Not by snow, Not by fear, not by someone else's authority. The road stays open, and so do we. Asterisk, asterisk. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one. Peace out.